Welcome to Pet Business Disruptors. I'm Clayton, and I am here today with Peter Roy, who is the current managing director of the Nutriment Group, and has been uh, leader of many of the different big raw companies, and also the freeze dried company, founder of the freeze dried company Koya.
Yep. Morning. Good
Yeah,
to be here.
yeah. Thanks a million.
Yeah.
Really pleased you've come on,
Yeah,
Peter.
no, delighted. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, no. Peter, so do you want to just kick us off by talking about your background?
Yeah, sure. So, well, pet background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I can go. I don't. Maybe don't go too far back.
it's, the so got involved in pets starting 2009, 2010. Um, I was working as a consultant in lots of different other businesses, and I met a guy called Craig Taylor that owned a business called Anglo Meat Products back then. And over the course of sort of, I don't know, about 6 months of sort of meeting up with each other and doing an odd day here and a day there, we sort of agreed that we'd start working together. And so I joined what's now known as the pet trade in 2010 with a business called Anglo Meat Products. We were the leaders I think, just about in raw feeding back then. And raw feeding back then really was selling to bags of tripe, bags of mince, bags of chicken, through to largely the sort of pet professional people. So breeders, show dogs, championship arenas, that type of people. The business had been sort of sitting around about 5-6 million for many years, fairly flat. And we took a look at a business and decided that Anglo Meat Products, whilst it was 30 years old, probably sounded more like a butcher than it did as a pet as a pet food, and changed the name to Nature's Menu. And back then, I think we were the first to involve the word nature in pet food. It became synonymous with almost every brand shortly after that.
Mm.
We changed the name to Nature's Menu, and started to look really at the product ranges that we put together. I think that probably one of the first things that we acknowledged, really, that it's probably the worst kept secret, is that whilst raw feeding is fantastic for the animal, it's really inconvenient.
Mm.
And so we set about trying to make it more convenient, and by doing so, we produced complete and balanced products, so people just had to open up and serve, and also then producing the nuggets, so it was easy to defrost and serve, and so that was way back in 2010. I think raw feeding back then was probably about market size about 20 million, I would say, and today it's probably 350 million, and it's changed enormously.
Mm.
From blokes and vans selling it to you know to high street pet shops, through to you seeing it today in Sainsbury's and Tesco's, in Asda, as well as all the large grocery chains across Europe, actually.
Yeah. It's interesting because obviously I've been in the industry my whole
Mm.
life, and so I saw a number of different companies over the years. So Fourth Glade,
Yep,
they were a frozen meat company
yep,
when I was young.
yep,
Nature Diet was called Contenta Pet Foods when
yep.
I was young, and they used to do frozen meat. And it was funny. I'm not sure if it was during your time, but I remember when because I always remember Anglian Meat Problems as AMP. We always
Yeah,
used to
yeah,
call it
yeah,
AMP,
yeah,
and I remember you brought out a pouch, the for like
yeah, yeah,
and I thought when that came out, that's the way the business was going, is that you were going to gradually ditch raw, because I mean you got to bear in mind, 2009 2010s, a lot of pet stores had got rid of their freezers by
yep,
that stage. I mean, we've gone from the sort of like 1980s, 1990s, where people went from like a walk-in cold store to a large chest freezer, to suddenly people were just like, it's not worth the electric. I'm getting rid of this. And then I saw, like, obviously Anglian then bring out their pouches, which I think I want to. I remember someone telling me they came from, I don't know, Slovenia or somewhere like this.
Germany it was.
It was a Germany. I remember it was somewhere like that, and I mean, I remember the first person saying they come from Liechtenstein. There's no way they're made in Liechtenstein, but it was. I know it was that part of the world, but I remember. and I thought, okay, we're going to lose another raw food. But then you brought out the nuggets,
Yeah,
and I think the nuggets were revolutionary at that
yeah,
time because it people had almost forgotten how to feed raw at
yeah.
this point. You know,
I think people. So the early days, my early days of raw feeding was introducing complete and balance, introducing nuggets, creating point of sale. Back then we spoke a lot about education, so we're educating the consumer, but educating the retailer, not only what products to stock, but how to sell them. And quite frankly, a bag of tripe and a beaten up white freezer out the back isn't that sexy. It just isn't. And as a consumer, you're not drawn to it. You're not intrigued by it. You're not willing to give it a go. But all of a sudden, it starts to have venison and blueberry, rabbit and cranberry. It started to have exotic flavors and tastes. It was easy to use, and it brought mainstream people into it. It really moved, honestly, I always call it a 10-year overnight success, but it really moved in those 10 years from very niche specialist users through to mainstream people.
yeah. And and also it was complete because
Yeah,
the big problem was with a lot of the minces was you had a chicken mince or a chicken and tripe
yeah,
or a free flow tripe, but you've still got to add stuff to it. And I remember look, and by this stage as well, if I go back to my youth, we used to sell people. It'd be a £5 bag of free flow tripe, and they'd buy some terrier meal, and
mm,
they'd buy some SA-37 or some seaweed powder or something like that, some kind of multivitamin to top it up. Whereas by this stage, the supplement market had absolutely collapsed.
mm,
We were just left with Vetzyme and Vitapet, and that was it. And so um, it was almost like I say, we'd forgotten how raw worked at
mm,
this point. So it was suddenly there was this complete dog food, which was in a raw format, but really easy to do something with. It was like, okay, if I've got a 5 kilo dog, it's a couple of nuggets, and you can take them out, put them in a little bowl, let them
yeah,
defrost, and it was
exactly.
just it made the industry easy again,
Yeah.
and it just opened the whole market back up. So that like it was a revolutionary thing, and I think it definitely started with Nature's Menu.
Yeah, well, I mean, so Nature's Menu until recently, and we've just brought out some, Nutriment now, brought out nuggets, but the only two businesses with the nugget form. It's a complicated procedure to make it, but it offers the ease. I think the speed of defrost uh, and the ease of portion control was the two drivers behind it.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing is that now the market's moved on,
Mm,
it's not such a big deal, and like it's that thing where I think because we'd forgotten how to do raw,
yeah.
you needed that. But now that raw is now mainstream again, and now shops are now full of supplements. There's, um, you know, com-
100%. So what we found is that you had your hardcore, almost evangelical raw feeders that were feeding, the just meat products and adding things by themselves at home and to make hopefully complete and balanced meals. Um, the new people came into complete and balanced ready-made meals, and what they do is they enter there, they get used to it, they get familiar with it, and they get confident with it, and then they start going, do you know what, I want to have a play around myself. I know my dog's called Pippa. I know Pippa likes broccoli.
yeah,
I don't know she likes beef. So we're starting to put things together ourselves. We're getting confident, and that's why I think that the complete and balanced market went from nothing in 2010 to about 50% of the market share by 2021. I'd say that's now down again, probably to about 30% as people move to products like 80/10/10, just meat products, and a lot of do it yourself at home because people are confident with it now.
mm,
They're not squeamish about it. They know that raw meat isn't smelly. They know that it's not bloody. They know that it's not that, and they just get a confidence about them. And that's when they go. In Europe, funny enough, that sort of fell behind. They're just coming into complete actually
yeah,
now, but they've done it the other way around. So their stores are very above every freezer are supplements and supplements. I think this year actually in the UK is going to be the year or the 2 or 3 years where supplements in the UK take on the same familiarity and shelf space as they do in Europe, in the UK independent pet trade, because people are now moving from complete into doing this DIY again.
Yeah. Well, I actually read a report in 2020 about supplements, how the supplement market was going to explode, and it was all this guy had done the market analysis, and he said it's to do with the raw food.
Mm.
As people become more and more invested in raw food, and the raw food market keeps growing, people are going to look to supplements as the natural way to actually
Yeah.
make their dinners as as beneficial, but also as tailored as
Yeah,
possible.
it's uniqueness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and again, it's interesting, like that Europe has been a little bit behind on this,
Mm.
but I don't think raw went away as much in Europe as it did in the UK.
Yeah, I think raw in Central Europe remains much more. They use the term bath, which is a term
Yeah,
that's familiar to people who've been in raw
yeah,
feeding for a long time. So they're a bit more just meat orientated. They are a bit more single protein orientated, and they have been doing work at home. But I think that making it mainstream now, coming through into some of the chains that are much more familiar. So Freshen Up and Futterhaus dominate Germany and Austria. They've now invested very, very heavily in raw destination centres, a lot with complete, a lot with fresh, and so I think they're bringing a whole new audience to it. That rather than in Germany they call the bath shop, and
mm,
so I think they're sort of doing the journey that we took about 10 years ago, is sort of starting to really gather pace there.
yeah, yeah. And also, I mean, look, I part of what I used to do when I was a wholesaler was I sold a lot of natural dog treats, and so I also saw the blowing up of raw destinations in the UK. So if you went back to 2010, there was no such thing as a raw dog food shop.
Mm.
Whereas now, I mean, by probably about 2015, I think suddenly I had loads on my books of people who were raw dog food stores, and then they would buy the natural treats off me. So I went from having none of that to having loads. So for me, it was a great boom to my particular
I
business.
think I think that time as well was time when um, that so natural came into the world of dog food, and pet stores for the first time really started to consider what products they stocked, because they weren't going to compete with grocery. They couldn't keep stocking the same products that grocery people stocked, because our dynamics were changing. The high street was changing, the way that we shopped and the way that we worked was changing. So they had to be more specialist. And I think things like natural dry products, natural wet products, started to come to the pet stores, and there were sort of early leaders like Scampers and Rokers and Croft and Cooks and these people all around the country that start to recognise that they needed to have alternative products there, products that the consumer felt were, one, you couldn't get them anywhere else, and two, they were superior to the products you could get in grocery channel. So that really gathered pace, and the shops, every year I was always concerned that we'd lose independent shops, because the way that people were trading, the internet, large grocery stores, single point of sale, and all that. Nope. Every single year the trade shops were robust. Every single year the trade shops grew, but the ones that kind of really knew what they were about and their identity. And the thing about raw feeding for a retailer, yes, you need a freezer. That's inconvenient.
Mm.
However, the frequency of shop for a retailer, you sell a big 15-kilo bag of dry dog food to somebody, you'd be lucky if you see them again in 3 months' time. But probably your raw feeder comes through to your shop once a week, and when they come, you get to know them, they get to like you. You know the dog's name. You're selling them treats. It's
But the beauty of raw food is that people have a limit on freezer space, and
yeah,
so it creates a more regular clientele.
yeah,
And also, look, the other thing as well is that it sort of makes the online space a lot more difficult,
yeah,
because if I want to buy, let's say, Nutriment Direct or Natural Instinct Direct or whoever Direct, then you have to order a reasonable amount, because you've got like the cost of boxing it and polystyrene, or putting that fluffy stuff in. Whatever you're doing, it costs money. Whereas I can go down to my local pet
yeah,
store a couple of times a week,
yeah.
and pick up what I need for the next few
it,
days.
it really lends itself to retail.
Yeah.
Yes, you do. Back in the early days, and still today, you do have people with multiple dogs that have dedicated freezers. But for most people, it's mixing up the space between the fish fingers and the dog food, and making sure that you've got enough for the kids as well as the dogs. And so it lends itself really nicely to pet.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I think for the independent stores, I mean, was talking about before we started, when I was young, every pet store would have like stacks and stacks of 15K bags of dog
Yeah,
food, every shop.
yeah,
But the internet kind of murdered it.
yeah,
Internet, poor parking,
yeah,
parking restrictions. Um, Pet stores now, they're not selling pallet loads of
right,
15K bags of dog food anymore. And so they've all had to evolve into
yeah.
what they actually can sell. And so, yeah, raw is naturally lends itself to that.
Yeah, I think raw and treats are the
Yeah.
two things that really, really work well for the independent pet retailer, and probably there's no coincidence that both those have grown. I think the treat sector now, and the UK dog treat alone, is about 750 million, and that's very often in pet stores rather than grocery stores.
Mm.
There's a lot in grocery, but pet stores have really, really embraced treats.
Well, I think also the reason grocery struggles naturally. So I sold natural treats. I mean, I was selling chicken feet in the 90s when I first, and me and Jeff Hollings went over and we bought some from Poland. And like, um, what what kept natural treats sort of out of a lot of grocery channels was just the natural problems you get with them. You know, it gets too hot.
Yeah,
They they go beetly. You have all kinds of problems with them. But also, because you're dealing in things which are effectively waste products, you're dealing against a number of market. You can't just pick up the phone and just say, "Give me 2 lorry loads
yeah,
of rabbits ears tomorrow,"
yeah,
because it doesn't exist
yeah,
in that way. It would always just be you work with your suppliers. They know roughly what you're going to sell. You kind of tailor your offering to that, so it made it a business we could be profitable in. I mean, this was always my thing as a wholesaler: is I'm not interested in Mars, Nestle, all this crap. I don't care how much of it sells. I can't make money out of it because
mm,
you can just pick up the phone and say, "Give us a lorry load of pedigree jam, a lorry load of Lapierre," but you'll never make money out of it. Whereas natural treats, you'd have to go to different factories, speak to different people, see if they could get it sourced, that sort of stuff. And like I say, I had like a network of people that I worked with for years who were like my friends. So
yeah, yeah.
it was a very different scenario compared to other things.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head as well. Actually, I think the pet trade, independent pet trade, we are a bunch of friends really,
Yeah.
and we do share knowledge. I'm off to Global at the end of this month, Global Pet Expo. And that's really where I meet a lot of other UK manufacturers over there, and we go there to meet our European clients, but also we go to look for new product development, because that's where the idea for complete and balanced raw came. That's where the idea for freeze dry came. That's where the idea for cold press came. Um, and 5 or 6 years later, it sort of lands in the UK and starts to grow in a slightly different way. But
Mm.
um,
Yeah, I mean, I always used to go to as many shows as I could, and
mm,
I'd always try and vary it up as well. I wouldn't just stick to, um, you know, like the big ones.
yeah,
I mean, I've been to ones in Southeast Asia. It like literally, I'd be going on holiday to Chicago, and I think I went to one in Chicago once, and I actually met. Company of Animals were there, for
oh yeah,
example, but it was the first time I'd seen yak chews, for
okay,
example, and it's always about just putting yourself. Look, and I'm one of these people that I can go anywhere in the world, and I'll go in a pet shop.
yeah, same here.
So
My kids hate me.
it was funny when I was in Paraguay. I actually put the pictures up because I like I do this stuff all the time, and someone said to me, Take a photo." So I took photos of myself on holiday in Paraguay in a pet store, going through. Look, this is what they're doing. It kind of reminds me of like Ireland in the 90s, with
Yeah.
the way it was, and talking to them about how the industry's evolving there, and yeah, it's just
Well, I think evolving is a word that I use a lot. I was with some of my new team at the Nutriment company only a couple of weeks ago, and some of them are very, very new to pet, and I think if you were to walk into pet stores today, you'd go, wow, raw feeding, really, really sophisticated, excellent point of sale, communication is fabulous, staff know what they're talking about, the packaging's superb, and what a wonderful range of flavors. That didn't happen overnight. the
Uh,
you know the in back in 2010, I think I was selling and wrapping 700, 1,000 freezers a year for about 6, 7 years. There was no freezers out there, and we had to wrap them. We had to put message on them. We had to put point of sale in the store. We had to educate the retailer, and now everyone gets it. It's brilliant. Everyone gets it, but it didn't happen overnight. And you've got to keep one eye on that, because 15 years from now, where are we going to be? We're going to be somewhere else.
yeah, yeah,
And that's about innovation.
yeah.
And,
But I always say that is that things are, if you're still doing the same in 5 years'
mm,
time, you've lost 30, 40% of your business, because that's just the market evolves continuously, and there'll be new things. I mean, we can look at it today and go, well, that's fantastic,
yeah.
but we're not done. We're never done. There's always a continuous move on these things.
So we at the Nutriment company now, we very much embrace the phrase raw and raw inspired, and that's probably in everything that we do, and everything that we think about. And so, we're very big. We're in raw. We're number one in the UK now, and that's something that we're really proud of. And we're turning over 68, 70 million pounds, and 40, 42 of that is raw feeding. And that's big. But we can't stop there, because we're moving into freeze dried. Freeze dried, I've got a bit of history in freeze dried, and that idea came from the US as well. The only three ways of preserving anything in life is to freeze it, is to cook it, therefore sterilize it and put it in an airtight can or pouch, or to take the water out of it, and that's freeze drying.
Mhm.
So we're going there. We should be launching later this year a fresh product as well, that's a pasteurized product. So leaning on the fresh side of
So,
things.
so it will be in the sort of butternut box, different dog sort of vein, or will it?
Probably.
Because I
Yeah,
just for the record, I'd love to see that, because
yeah,
my issue with butternut box, different dog pure, all of these subscription companies, is I like freshly cooked
yeah,
as a concept. I actually use Tugs as
yeah,
with one of my dogs, which is a meat and insect
yeah,
product. Um, but no one sells it to independents. No, it's
yeah,
not in the pet stores, and I I personally hate subscriptions.
yeah.
I think that they're not good for the consumer, and I
Mm,
think that they're terrible for the pet store. And look, we need to be supporting pet stores, because if we want to buy our supplements and our beds and our collars and leads and all the
100%.
in the future, we
Yeah,
need to be
yeah,
supporting pet stores.
100%. So I've always been, and the Nutriment company, we've supported this before me, and we continue to support it even more strongly now that I'm here. The independent pet trade,
Yeah,
or pet specialist. Now I capture all of the large chains in there as well,
yeah,
but pet
yeah.
specialty, I think, is what's really important. Why do they exist? How do they manage to succeed, and how they manage to grow and thrive? They grow and thrive by support from businesses that support them. They grow and thrive by having innovative products that aren't available in other channels. And they've grown and thrive by having the knowledge and ability to sell them. So that's what we hope to provide them to do that. So, yes, we'll be doing freeze dried in that channel. Yes, we'll be doing fresh in that channel. And yes, we'll be doing a pasteurized product in that channel. So, all of which will come out in 2025. That's the year, isn't it? Yes,
That's this year.
2025.
That's this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It always takes till about March to get the year
Oh,
right.
don't. To be honest, I usually get used to the year when we get to October, and then it's almost ready to change, to be honest. And then I know it's always my thing is always looking back and going, 2010 weren't that long ago, and it's like 15 years.
I know, I know. But
Yeah,
so I think it's really important. I can't overemphasize how much we support the Pet Specialist channel, and I think that the channel really allows for brands to evolve. It allows for small brands to start. A lot of brands. I was watching one of your uh, podcasts only the other day with Mersey Raw.
yeah,
classic example of a regional player that grows, then outgrows their factory, and then it starts to outgrow their territory. Um, and I wholly support regional businesses doing really, really well if they do good quality products.
Yeah,
You know, there's nothing better than seeing another really good raw business out there doing really, really well.
yeah.
The
And he's a big supporter of the independent trade, which I
Yeah,
love.
yeah,
And like his product is fantastic. I mean, I do use Nutriment Company's product as well,
very good.
just for balance. But I use the low purine dog
Okay,
food
yeah,
because
yeah,
I have a dog which has urinary
yeah,
problems.
yeah,
But yeah, like I love companies that support the independent
yeah,
channel, and I love companies that actually go out and they want to take things up a notch. And I feel like
yeah,
Bennett Mersey does that. So
yeah. I think innovation is super, super key. Listen to your customers; they'll tell you what they need. Try and make it as easy to use as possible. Use brilliant ingredients, super, super key, and maintain all your quality standards. I think that's the key. I think, like all sectors, probably raw feeding catches the good, the bad, and the ugly, and there's that in everything in life.
yeah, yeah.
And so, I think, going to your local pet store, getting good advice about the product ranges that they supply. There's us and there's plenty of others.
Yeah.
There you
And so the Nutriment Company, obviously,
Yep.
they've been pretty active in the market,
Yep.
buying companies.
Yep.
Um, like, is there a strategy, long term strategy? Because it just seems like every time I flick on my LinkedIn, it's like someone else has been purchased by them, and
The
I'm every week I'm waiting for the new one. You kind
the
of,
well, I mean, we've been very clear with the strategy. So the strategy is raw businesses and it's treats and supplements.
yeah,
So they're the two areas where we feel that there is some improvement to be done. And somebody's got to take, I think, particularly the supplement business and really make it happen in the UK in the independent pet trade. So yeah, we're very clear about that. We're in a large investment program at the moment in terms of production facility. So getting a single production facility in place, but we don't change a great deal with the brands that we acquire. A recent raw acquisition was the Dog's Butcher.
yep,
The Dog's Butcher is a classic example, really, of the sort of consumer we were talking about earlier. The Dog's Butcher consumer may have started on a complete and balanced product, but they've grown confident with raw feeding, and they want to look at novel proteins. And actually, when you look at the Dog's Butcher products, you can see the quality of the different types of cuts of meats and things like that. So we don't change a great deal when we're in there. We offer the ability to more plug into our sales and marketing side. So what the businesses that we acquire tend to see is an increase in distribution in the pet trade.
mm,
So um, yeah, so we're all about raw inspired,
mm,
and we won't be buying extruded dog brands.
yeah.
It's not what we're about. And
Yeah, I think the first one I noticed was obviously Nova because
yeah,
Lloyd would have technically been a competitor of mine at one point.
okay, yeah,
Um, although I never really saw him, I was always very friendly with Lloyd.
yeah,
I like him a lot as a
yeah.
person. But yeah, that was the first one I kind of saw, and like that company still runs the same as it did
Yeah, 100%. I mean,
before.
Lloyd, I was with Lloyd on Monday, and I've known Lloyd and Anton since 2009. And yeah, and that they row their own boat, and they just get the support in terms of distribution. But they're very much, we're a great believer in letting businesses breathe.
Yeah,
They've done well to get where they've got to, and why not? That should just continue, really.
yeah, yeah, and it's like I say, it's interesting. The sort of yeah, that it's not just raw. I think you said raw and inspired. Obviously, there was I forget what his surname was. Dominic's business, Petrie's Wholesale, which you bought
Oh
last.
yeah, yeah. Well, Louis, the son.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
Louis. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
The
when I used to deal with him, it was Dominic. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's going back a few years.
Well, that business is particularly interesting because we're fundamentally manufacturers, and that's what makes us different to a lot of other brands out
Yeah,
there. So there's loads of very, very, very well-known brands out there that don't make a single thing.
yeah,
we're manufacturers, so we take a long-term view. Pet Treat Wholesale is a manufacturer, so they manufacture their own product ranges. I think probably the largest maker of sausages and sausage varieties in the UK.
Oh,
Um,
for sure. Yeah.
yeah, and do really really well out of it. Based up in Burton, and we're just investing a lot of money in that facility to allow them to produce more. And and that's going back to the treats element of UK retail has just exploded. I think whilst there's been pressure on food, um, as a consumer, you're always going to pick something that you want to have, but it will have to be within your own budget. And so people have, during sort of times of hardship, perhaps traded down in terms of food, but they've always given their dog a treat.
Mm.
There's nothing more enjoyable
Well,
than that relationship.
we're a very treat-driven society. Even when you look at our own habits, I
Yeah,
think more so than Europe for sure. But I think America is a bit like us in the sense we're used to snacking ourselves. We're used to,
yeah,
you go in the petrol station, get a little chocolate bar, get a little drink, and we kind of treat our dogs the same. So it's sort of like when you're in the pet shop, you buy the food, you go, "Oh, I'll give them a little couple of treats or whatever." So it's I think we have a real culture of that here, to be honest. And look, for me, the treat market is something that blew up, and
yeah. I mean, it's massive. As I said, I think I said earlier, it's like the UK, circa 750 million dog treats alone. And it's massive.
but interesting when you look at the evolution of that. So when I first started, it was all about smackos and rodeos
Yeah,
and then
odios.
yeah, bonios, and then like knuckle bones
Yeah,
and shanks and paddywhack and pig's ears were like the shining light out of all of
yeah,
it. Um, but that's what I mean. Like for me, it's like I hit that wave at the right time,
yeah,
doing chicken feet and then just I tried everything at that time. I remember getting pig snouts in from Belgium, and then I remember buying actually a whole pig's head. We
right,
tried selling these whole pig's heads, and
right.
dogs loved them, but the problem was is they were too rich, so they'd like eat the whole thing and then they'd throw them up, and there'd be teeth and everything everywhere. It's terrible. But we just tried everything, like anything. If someone came to us with a cut of meat, it was like, and we turn it
Yeah.
into a treat. Let's do it. Let's.
Well, I think if you go into, many good quality pet stores now, the variety or selection of air dried animal parts is phenomenal. From standard stuff through to very, very novel proteins, very, very novel, uh, very novel parts of the animal. And pig snouts I hear are quite hard to come by at the moment. They're all going to China, I'm told.
They did. It was always the problem.
Yeah.
The Chinese were always the problem, and that's pig's ears. It's snouts. But the problem is what happens is that the Chinese will pay as much for an unprocessed head as we will pay for the process, like than we will pay for the different parts once you've processed it and all the rest of it. So, from the abattoir's perspective, I can either just freeze load the heads and just send them straight to China, or I can process them and get potentially less money for it.
Yeah,
And
I remember there was a tripe spike um, when China were hosting the Olympics, and the Chinese government opened the door to the the tripe for human consumption over in China, and all the tripe dealers, started to look east for a while. But so yes, Tripegate, I think it was called.
but I think look, we've always because we're working in the commodity space. Commodities are kind of like that, and I think like look, if you went back again for me 30 years ago, um, we used to get bones for free.
Mm,
In fact, they used to pay us to take the bones,
mm,
and then we'd just get them cooked and dried. Whereas by the time I was, like 15 years later, we were paying for bones.
yeah,
Pig's ears were dirt cheap because they were almost like a waste product. Whereas I think they ended up being one of the most expensive cuts per kilo of the
mm,
pig was the ear, which is crazy. And this was a lot of it was to do with there was the gelatine markets, then there was the Chinese eating it, and there's all these different markets you're up against. But I think this is just normal when you're dealing in commodities because it is
yeah.
meat is a commodity at the end of the day.
I think that we've, in the last 20 years, it's become an overused phrase now, and perhaps people start to wince when you say it, but but we've moved. It's a subtle change from being pet owners to pet parents. Yeah, and people sort of wince when you say pet parent now because it's a bit overdone.
Yeah.
But 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 the subtlety of just the caring nature is what I mean. From and so the premiumization that's gone on since 2010 in pet has just been phenomenal. A good quality can of dog food in 2010 was 79, 89 pence. Good quality.
Mm,
Same can of dog food today, £4.50.
yeah.
It's just, the our desire to want to give our pets the best is phenomenal.
But even if you just look at the kibble market, I mean, the premium market, the market leaders back in the early 2000s was like James Wellbeloved, and before that, Eukanuba.
Mm-hmm.
And these are almost seen as mid-range products now,
Yeah, yeah,
but in fact, overpriced mid-range products for what they are. I mean, you can make of that what you want, but like, that's how they're seen. Um, and I think like because we have moved so much, I think the market has moved. Like more people are looking at it and going, "Well, I want to give my dogs the best." And I think that we're a lot more aware of nutrition for ourselves as much as we are for our animals,
yeah.
and so I think that all bleeds into each other.
Yeah, I think that culturally things have changed as well, and I think that so we as an industry for some reason we capture cats and dogs and we put them together. So whenever you look at numbers, it's cat and dog market is this, and
Yeah.
cat and dog market is that, but they're completely different consumers, and I think that the dog owner has moved to natural and moved to pet specialty much quicker than the cat owner, and that's for a variety of reasons. I think one, your dog's a very public part of you. You walk your dog, you go out for walks with your dog, people comment on your dog.
Yeah.
You got to pick up your dog's poo.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Culturally. Now, culturally, maybe that didn't happen 30, 40 years ago, but
Yeah.
culturally, you do pick up today. So, by picking up your dog's poo, I've got a vested interest in how healthy my dog is
Yeah.
because I want it to be firm and I want it to be nice and I want it to be,
Yeah.
and that was bizarrely, that was one of probably the key unknown features of raw feeding is small, firm poo. Everyone who feeds raw knows it.
Yeah.
But it's sort of a throwaway comment, but probably the thing that people adopt the most.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think like also cat customers are primarily grocery.
Yeah, 100%. I think 92% of cat food sold through the grocery channel. Palatability is the key. So it's almost the flip side
Yeah.
to dogs. So cats are very private.
Yeah.
I've had a cat and dog the same length of time. Nobody's ever commented on my cat's skin and fur, and I've never seen my cat poo. And so, I just hope that she's okay because she's fed well.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
is she, isn't she? I'm not so sure, but I know about my dog
Yeah.
because it tells me, it shows me.
Yeah.
And so cats about palatability, it hasn't gone down the natural route yet. I don't think it will, although cats are significantly more prone to eating meat than dogs. We consider cats to be much more luxury, much more softer, but cats are much more meat eaters than
Oh
dogs.
God, yeah.
But they're very picky, and texture and temperature are really, really important to cats. And unfortunately, the largest cat food brands in the UK tend to have very palatable but sugary products.
Mm.
And so you're only going to change those if you have the knowledge and the motivation to sit it out.
Well, I think also because cat customers are grocery, I always say grocery is like the low information environment of the industry. And so it was like when IM's Eukanuba moved into the supermarket. How do you explain that your product is three times the price of the product
Mm.
next to it when people spend less than a second looking at the options? And I think this is the thing with cat food is that people are looking at and going, tastes as good as it looks or something like that. And then you go, well, that's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean,
But
I was guilty of it.
yeah,
So
yeah,
before I moved into the industry, I got married and two cats came with my wife, and so I trusted a supermarket for our food, and we had cats, so I just went to the cat food aisle and bought the cat food. Said chicken on it. said beef on it. Cats
Mm.
bloody loved it, and so why would I interrupt that process? It- I think whenever you go into a store, if you ever see somebody looking at the back of the ingredients, you can guarantee it's a manufacturer because
Yeah,
nobody else does.
yeah.
Chicken. I thought there was chicken in it.
Well, but the thing is as well is it's not that grocery customers don't want to spend the money or they don't want the best as well. Like so, Marina works in a store which gets a lot of natural grocery customers in, and she says like she'll get a grocery customer and they look and they're not sure what to buy, and she
Mm,
always says to them, "Do you want what do you normally feed? Do you want something of the same quality,
mm.
or do you want something of the same price, or do you want would you like something better?" And most of the time they'll want the best thing they can feed. It's not that they're
Yeah,
buying a bag of let's say X dog food and saying, well, I kind of dislike my dog, so I'm going to get him
yeah.
something cheap and nasty.
I think nobody knowingly feeds their pet rubbish,
Yeah.
but lots of people do unwittingly.
Yes. Yeah.
And with a little bit of knowledge, you can often for the same money buy a significantly better product, or for 10 or 20 pence a day more.
Yeah.
The and But it's a cycle that unless you interrupt the cycle with something, so I've got a cat, I keep going to the grocery store, I keep buying the standard cat food, cat goes down, the cat eats it. I interact with my cat, I put the cat food down, the cat loves me, it comes around purring around me whilst I put the cat down, I feel great. you
Yeah.
know and why would I want to interrupt that whole process by putting something down that the cat looks up or he walks away from, and all of a sudden I feel unloved? And that's cat bias.
Yeah, and the average cat buyers aren't aware that there's sugar in there.
No.
There's like full of cereals, and
Yeah.
cats are absolute carnivores.
Yeah.
So it's I mean, look, they need taurine in their food
Mm.
because they need, and I'd still argue animal-based taurine, not synthetic taurine, because of that's part of their natural thing. They go blind without it.
Yeah.
So you need to actually do that. And give them the better. If you thought about it, they should be getting a higher meat product.
So if you go to cat breed, so if you go to cat breeders,
Yeah.
lots of cat breeders feed raw. Loads of cat breeders feed raw. The super cat pedigree breeders, they feed raw. But we get our cats in a different way to we get our dogs. We get our cats because somebody from next door has a litter. One just starts turning up at your house. The bloke over the road moves away and wants you to do it, or you get played from it and you get it from a rescue centre or whatever. It's not so planned as a dog. A dog, you sit down, you plan, you decide which breed's ready for the house. I've got young kids, I've got no kids, I've got a big garden, I've got no garden, I live in a flat, whatever. And you consider all these things. So when you're considering that, you consider food, whereas a cat just turns up, um, and and so it's not been thought through with as much depth as a
Mm.
dog. And so raw feeding in the UK is probably 99.999% dog.
Yeah.
But if you go to cat breeders, they almost all feed raw. But that gets lost in transition in terms of when you get it. And then when you get a cat on some of the more easy to use, fat sprayed, sugar laced products, it's very difficult to get them off it.
No.
Um, but we are starting to see now, both the Nutri Company and there's two or three other cat rule brands out there now doing quite well. It's still small, a
Mm.
small start, but it's starting to grow for the first time. Speak to retailers, it's now starting to grow. The issue we've got with cat is the transition. Cats love meat, but they don't like cold meat.
Mm.
So, the and so it's about motivation. If you sit it out with a cat, it will eat it and it will benefit from it.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a long sit.
Cats are difficult because they are. I always used to say to people when they used to come in, like this is going back to when I was in a pet shop when I was a teenager. I always used to say to people, look, just got a cat. I said, if you want to start them on Felix or Whiskers or whatever the sort of big brand is, forget about ever trying to give them something better because they're just they're not like a dog. A dog will they'll hold on a bit
Yeah,
and then go, oh god, I'm
yeah.
starving now. Cats, they'll just go out and kill and murder some things out in your garden. So it's like,
Yeah, I know, raw meat.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So it's a much tougher proposition, cat, because once the cat has been converted onto the
It's a
sugary,
tough one.
yeah, it is a tough
It's
one,
a
yeah.
tough one. But yeah, I think, it's one that as a pet food manufacturer and working in the pet specialist market, we've always got an eye on it. We're always trying to improve it. We're always trying to give the consumer choice. But it's a difficult. It's the conversion that's difficult, and the motivation. You can get so many households that really research. They make two journeys. They go to the pet store and they pick up the food for their dog, and then they just pick up what's down the aisle for the cat
Mm.
in the grocery, and they love them both equally.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
the so it's a tough one. We're all trying to well, it's literally a six. If cat and dog food's 6 billion in the UK, it's a £3 billion question. We're all trying to figure out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so Peter, tell me about, like, because obviously when you were at Nature's Menu for a
Mhm.
number of years, and then you decided to go and become the founder of Koya.
Right.
What was that driving force all about?
So, going back to what said earlier was I'd so Nature's Menu was bought by a large business, and in 2020, 2021, and like things, it was time for a change. And I'd always had one eye on the US, as I said earlier, about products and that had come from there. And I'd actually brought freeze dried over to Nature's Menu in the Country Hunter format
Yeah,
in 2015. Um, but it was great as a snack, worked really well as a snack, and produced the first biscuit with a piece of freeze dried in it. So it's like the Kibble Plus version back in 2015. But I could see that I I I thought about retiring, and then and then realised that I was too young, and that all my mates were working, and I'd better do something. And so I I was over in the US, and almost started working for a very large raw business over there, but decided um, that I thought that freeze dried was an area, or freeze dried raw, as I call it, freeze
yeah,
dried raw was an area that was really underdone in UK and Europe, and it is.
yeah,
Um, and so with the benefit of a very very good producer called International Freeze Dried IFD, based in Norfolk, where
yeah,
I am, they produced the product for me, and so took it to market. Got really good distribution in the first 3 months. All the chain stores had it, all the independents had it. Um, but like all businesses, it probably needed a bit more. It was just
mm,
me and one other person. Needed a bit more to it. So IFD, the manufacturer of the product, bought Koya.
okay,
In the end, it's back with Craig, who was the guy that I worked with at Anglo Meat Products.
right, right,
Um, Craig is phenomenally good at new product development, and so he's taken it on and allowed me really to move on to head up the Nutriment company here in the UK, which was something that really excited me. So going back to sort of 2010, 11, 12, there were three brands really, and there were lots of raw businesses in the UK,
yeah,
but there were three brands, probably brand building, that were all fighting over the same space, and it was Nature's Menu, Natural Instinct, and Nutriment. And and so I joined the Nutriment company a month after we'd just acquired Natural Instinct, and so to sit down and work with the two brands that that I'd fought so hard against all over those years, to bring them up to the top table, so to speak, was just sort of too tempting, really, to turn down.
Yeah.
And I thought there was a lot of work. I think that the raw market in for some of the larger brands that have sort of lost sight of the independent pet trade, and it was something that we wanted to get back involved with. And the project, to grow a raw business, um, was just too exciting to turn down again. And so um, so did a couple of years with Koya to bring that to market. And now it's literally six months with the Nutriment company. With a lot of that time has been bedding in the acquisitions. You're right. There's
Mm.
probably been one a month for,
Yeah, it,
for
it does seem like it.
yeah,
Does it? There's
yeah.
been a lot.
Watch this space. And
Is that going to carry on for the rest of the year?
maybe not one a month, yeah, the chance to really generally build, in my opinion, the best raw business in the UK was just too big to turn down.
Mm.
Raw has been my pet life, and I dread to think how many freezers I'm responsible for in in pet stores. I mean, well over 20,000 probably, and and but I just believe in the product. Even back then with the previous company that sold dry products, that sold wet products, that sold raw products, I put on every freezer raw is best. Raw is best was the slogan,
Yeah,
because it is.
yeah,
It's not the most convenient format, and I recognise that. So that's why sometimes you need to produce, a wet product. But if you're going to produce a wet product, just try and produce the best wet product you can
mm,
produce. If you're going to produce a dry product, produce the best dry product you can produce. There are too many marketing companies out there that really have more um, bandwidth thrown at the color of their packaging than they do the contents of their product. And and as a manufacturer, I'm probably guilty the other way round.
mm,
We're always more concerned about what's in there, and maybe not so good at the marketing side of it. And I think we've got a good balance where we are
yeah,
today.
yeah. No, it is a balance, and
Yeah.
I do agree with you. There is the trouble with pet food is like in most products is it's a marketing operation as much as it is anything,
Yeah.
and I think because it is so complex, especially when you look at kibble, like to actually ascertain what's good and what's bad, and y-
Yeah. It, yeah. Don't get me started on kibble.
no, but look, I'm not against anything. I'm
Yeah.
not ideological about anything. I actually give a range of diets. Two of my dogs have raw. One has um like tugs. I have one that has cold press,
Yeah.
and then I have one which has low purine raw.
Yeah.
So
And lots of people mix feed.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
A lot of people mix feed. And I think, I have no beef with anything that's been produced of high quality,
Yeah.
and and providing everybody understands what's in it and why it's in it and how it's been produced, then they can make their own mind up.
Yeah.
And
I just think it's difficult for end consumers sometimes, especially when they're looking at kibble, to actually ascertain what's good, what's bad, because you know it. There's so much conflicting information out there,
yeah,
and
and there's a few terms on the back of the pack that might not be clearly obvious what they are.
yeah.
The you know meal.
But I do find it interesting what the Nutriment company is doing because I do think, look, it kind of reminds me, obviously, in a much bigger scale of kind of how I saw the market. Is that I do think raw is like it's like the most untouched by the big guys,
Yeah.
and so and I do see that it's something that's going to keep growing,
Hmm.
and I do think it's going to keep evolving. And I think I'm kind of interested in Nutriment just from the perspective that I kind of look at them and think it's a good way of if you can carve out a chunk of the market of something that's growing and that's becoming more and more prominent. And the fact that you're obviously you leave the managers in place, leave the owners in place, the company's running. It's not like you're by natural instinct shutting it down,
No.
bringing it all into Nutriment and just maybe knocking out some extra packaging or something. You're literally keeping those businesses intact. It's an interesting. It's a very. I think it's a very smart way how
Yeah.
Nutriment company's working.
Yeah, well, thanks. And it predates me, so I can't take the credit for it. But you're right. It's the largest sector that's untouched by the big boys. And I think Mars bought Merrick, but I might be wrong in the US. But the I do remember in the early days, say 2014, I was at a Pet Industry Federation seminar day, and I was sat next to somebody who was quite up in a very, very, very large pet food business in the UK. And I thought we were doing quite well at the time. At Nature's Menu was sort of, growing. We'd probably got to 15 million or something by then. And, it was in Pets at Home and everybody was talking about it. And I felt quite good. And I was sat next to him at the lunchtime thing. And he sort of, he's very, very, very high up in a very, very big pet food business. And he says to me, "So what is it you do?" I said, "Oh, Nature's Menu." "Oh, right. And what is it they do?" He said, "Well, we make raw pet food." "Raw pet food? Oh, right. Okay. Well, how do you store it?" And I said, "Well, it's in a freezer in the pet stores." "Oh," and looked at me like that. And I thought, wow, maybe I haven't done very well. But I'm sure they've heard of it now. But yeah, I mean, in the UK, so dog food in the UK is what, say 3.25 billion in the UK, and just over 10% of that's raw.
Yeah.
So all the raw feeders, raw manufacturers, have really contributed to a really great industry for the pet specialist market.
Yeah.
And almost all of it is bought through there.
And look, I mean, 10% is mega,
Mm.
especially for it not to be in the hands of the Mars Nestle's of this world, because um, that's always been the thing where when you're fighting kibble against kibble, it's very hard. But actually, because it is such a good product, and because it's not the easiest thing for
Mm.
them just to transition into, they can't just pick up the phone to a C&D or a Cranswick or and just go, right, give us a lorry load of this, let's just copy this. There's a lot more to it. I think it's definitely it's definitely, as a manufacturer, it's the area you'd want to be in for sure.
Yeah, and I think it has great roots. I think that raw feeders are committed to raw. They might change brands, um, um, but it's never ever been in the communication. It doesn't perform in the same way that dry or wet does in store. And what I mean by that is, if you go to a gondola end in any pet store and it's got 25% off, and it's a dry product, and I buy dry products and it's about the same price, but it's 25% off to what I normally buy, I might give it a go. But you just don't walk past the freezer and go, "Wow, Tripe's 50% off, I'll try it." You just don't. You need to want to do it. You need to be educated to do it. And it's all, we spoke in the early days, it's all about knowledge and education. Because, if you know what you're feeding your animal, if you actually know it, you know, you could be quite concerned.
Mm. And I think this has always been the beauty of the independent trade, is that we are the salespeople. I always used to say, look, I dealt with around 500 different accounts, like when I packed up, and I could always tell you which ones were the ones who were able to impart their knowledge and sell to their customers, because they would be the successful ones. The ones who used to sit behind the counter and just go like that,
Yeah.
they were the ones who were gradually disappearing
Yeah,
off the map.
100%. But we used to, we used to, and we do, we invest time with retailers that sell our products rather than that retailers that allow people to buy our products. And and you're right, the successful pet stores are the ones that have really thought about everything. I always say to all of our team, we need to be confident that our products warrant a space in that store, because if they don't, it shouldn't be in that store. And the good quality pet stores will examine and audit anything that they sell because it's got their name on it.
Mm.
And the people that do that, and the people that know about their products, and the people that give advice are the ones that absolutely flourish.
Mm. And I think also there's been like a mentality shift amongst stores in the time I've been doing it. If you went back again 25, 30 years ago, I think stores felt they had to have pedigree charm
Yeah,
and they had to have bakers on their shelf. Whereas now people are looking at their what they're stocking and going, do I endorse this personally? Can I see a reason why I would endorse this for a
yeah,
customer? And if they can't see that, well, then why are they stocking it? And a lot of them, especially the ones which are growing, the ones that are successful, they're looking at their range of products and saying, well, if I've got somebody who wants a mid-range kibble dog food and they can't have foreign, well, then I'm going to have Skinner's, for example, because
yeah,
I think it's the best of its time. But then if I want a frozen meat product, I'm going to go with, let's say, Nutriment because the quality is good, and then I'm going to get like an 80-10-10 for people who are big users
mm,
who just want a very basic one. And again, an interesting thing about Nutriment Company is the fact that because you've taken over, what's the name of the company? I always get this wrong. It's like Fido's Diphos, naturally raw, like I think is what you call it.
uh, totally natural.
Yeah, totally
Yeah,
natural.
yeah,
But you actually have that ability so that people don't actually have to use a number of different raw companies to do that.
yeah.
They
Well, that is spot on the strategy. So we're going through a a brand evolution, if you like, of the so Nutriment in our world, Nutriment is our top tier. So it's the classic case of good, better, best. Yeah.
yeah,
So on our good one is Debo, which is
yeah,
totally natural. So
yeah,
it's Debo. Debo will continue to expand. It will be the free flows. It will be the chubs. It will be the 80-10-10s. It's that sort of
yeah,
confident multi-dog raw feeder that will have supplements that will support it, and all that. And that's a brand that will just grow and grow and develop this year. We've got Natural Instinct, which is sort of a multi-channel brand, predominantly working dog, but across retailers. And we've got Nutriment, which is sort of more superfoods, novel proteins. And so we like to think that within those three, and Dog Butcher more recently, we've got, which again is very 80-10-10, so it fits very nicely into that side of it. We've got everything that a retailer would need for that price point. Because you're right,
yeah,
people buy pet food, in my opinion, people buy pet food for there are three sort of driving things that are important to them, and those three things are of different level of importance. So it's one is price.
yeah,
You can't
yeah,
avoid price. You can't avoid price. But as a pet owner, I'm going to spend as much as I can,
yeah,
but there's still a limit.
yeah,
So it's a price. It's not expensive or it's cheap, but it's value for money,
yeah,
and I can afford it. Two, it's convenient, and what I mean by convenient is it's convenient to find. It's in a pet store. It's convenient to find. They can deliver to me. It's convenient to use. It's rippable. It's convenient to defrost quickly. Whatever. Uh, and quality. And that quality is always perceived quality because, as we spoke about the
yeah,
cats, you know, and some very well known pet food, dog food. Sorry, it's got excellent. People of I'm mid-50s. People of my age and older will have grown up with adverts for these sort of pet foods,
yeah,
and we might consider them very good quality
yeah,
because of it.
yeah,
But so it's quality. So you get those three things, and if a pet store can cover those three things off in all formats, then I think they've got it covered.
mm,
Um, and that's really sort of the driver behind it. So our big push this year will be about brand. Our big push this year will be about treats, and our big push will be about supplements. Because I think that supplements, I'm speaking to retailers now, large and small, you know, and they all seem to be of one voice now. That this is the year that supplements will really start to
yeah,
grow in pet specialty.
yeah,
Because we do so for ourselves.
yeah, yeah. But I do love like the strategy of because look, one thing pet stores always have problems with is they don't want 100 suppliers.
Yeah.
And the fact that you do, when you do take over a company, you will have their top 10 selling products
Yeah.
available if you deal with Nutriment.
Yeah.
And I do love that about what you're doing because, that just from my own perspective, I was very obviously in touch with the independent stores. I understand that like it's really hard to make orders up on a regular basis
Mhm.
because,
Yeah.
the cost of shipping to
Yeah.
them, but then also, you know, do you do you like you sell out of one SKU, you got a problem. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And like, so you want to be able to make up regular orders, and actually, the more you can offer them as a company, the less. Like I'm obviously an advocate for wholesale because I was a wholesaler, but at the same time, the more you can offer as a D2C company, the less they need to actually, they can almost treat you as a secondary wholesaler. A bit like how Canagan have developed Simply and Your and
Yeah.
expanding their range, where it's easy for you to make up a £200
Yeah.
order with Canagan
It's
or a five.
it's if it's not on the store, you can't buy it.
Yeah,
So availability is everything.
yeah,
So and the thing about freezers is create the availability is very it's harder to do because you can't buy excess stock as a retailer and just put it out back. You can only if you've got a 100 kilo freezer and you go down to 60 kilos, you can only order 40 kilos.
yeah,
By the time it's come, you've sold another 20 kilos. So your freezer's never full.
yeah,
So availability is really key. And that's stuff that we work with our retailers on. So we try and reduce the minimum order and work with them on planograms so that, don't have 2 kilo bags, have 1 kilo bags because you've got twice as many bags in a
yeah,
freezer, and that gives the consumer choice. And
yeah,
so it's yeah, you're right, and that's a driver behind it.
yeah. No, no, no. It's brilliant. No, and look, it's good to see. It's always good to see new things getting pushed out, and
Yeah,
like I say, you're not just buying companies, you're expanding ranges as well,
yeah.
which is important.
Innovation is the word that probably gets used most in our business, and it's it's how pet specialty stands out from the crowd. Without it, we you know we're just we're just selling the same thing they can buy everywhere.
Yeah. Well, it's like I say, it's I always yeah, one thing I used to say about it was today's pet shop is B&M's pet section in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
There's an element of truth, it's like because as we move away from it, things become more mass market. I mean, you look at, I remember when, like the Chinese chicken stuff,
Mm.
the Chinese dog treat chicken first came over, and I remember seeing that in Hong Kong when I was over there in about 2006. I went into the pet street and there was loads of, oh, this is really interesting, and then within a few years, everyone had it
Yeah.
everywhere, and now B&M's have got it, and the
I mean,
range has got it.
yeah. I mean, pet is everywhere,
Yeah,
and it's everywhere. All retail want to get involved with pet. They do it to different levels of knowledge and different levels of price points and all the rest of it. And of course, I spend you know part of my time going around to these places and seeing what sort of offering they've got. The trouble about B&M doing pet is every time I go in, I come out with giant bags of crisps and 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 loads of tea. but
yeah.
but
I come out with weird types of cereal. I do generally.
so I have to leave them in the boot of the car for a couple of weeks till I sort of sneak them into the house for my wife. But yeah, everyone's look, joke aside, everyone does pet. They do it in a different way to a different audience. I think that pet specialty does food and treats and will do supplements really, really, really. They are excellent at it. Um, yes, there's a lot of pre-packed treats everywhere
Yeah,
now. Um, and But I think the more novel proteins, all the chain stores as well as the independents have really, I think the last couple of years have really evolved yet again. Actually, I think there was a raw revolution in terms of upright freezers and point of sale and stickers and complete and balanced and all the rest of it, and we've kind of done that. And then there seems to be a treat revolution going on in store in terms of deli style, scoop, serve, pre-pack, all the rest, novel proteins. And now you're starting to see supplements again, not just creeping in, but really sort of taking some shelf space
mm,
now. And that will take the knowledge for the retailer as well. I remember in the very early days going to a very, very large, well-known pet retailer, and I was doing a nutrition day with them at a conference, and spoke to them about what was in the freezer, and what it was and how to sell it. And one of the experts there said, "Oh, thank God I know that. I won't have to be scared of the freezer now, because it's hardly going to sell if none of the salespeople are going to go anywhere near it, because they don't want any questions about it." And so I think that sort of knowledge is good. I think that there's probably for raw, we're UK Pet Food, the industry association is collecting data as we speak on it, but I'd be very surprised if it didn't come out with another 20% growth in raw pet food yet again this year. That type of range.
Mm.
It continues to gather pace at the expense of the more mainstream dry products, I think. So it's really good, because it's really good for your pet. I hope that we can start to capture much more of the cat market with raw, um, but that will take time,
Yeah.
and that will take knowledge, um, and so that's just a start.
And I think like the cat thing will happen. It's just as it's just getting the knowledge from dog to bleed into cat, and I think
Yeah,
it will start with the people who have a cat and a dog and that sort of
yeah,
stuff, and it will drive. And look, I know people at just who work at Just for Pets, and they've just started doing the cat meat about a year ago or so, and
yeah. It's going well.
it's going well,
Yeah.
it's selling. So the the driver is there,
Mm.
but again, it's getting the shops on board to sell it, and it's also just trying to get more cat people in out of grocery and into it and into pet
Yeah.
specialty.
And that's about motivation, and the motivation comes with knowledge, because as we said a little bit earlier, the dog will give in. Yeah,
Yeah,
the dog will give in, and dogs in the main, poor things, sometimes will eat anything, but cats are very picky. Texture and temperature are super super key there, and if they're used to one form of diet, moving them to another diet which isn't sprayed with fat
yeah.
or isn't covered in sugar, is going to be difficult.
Yeah, I know. Also, I remember someone saying to me that when you do palatability tests on cat, I think the barrier, the marker is something like 60 to 70% compared to I think 90% for dogs or something like that. I know it was considerably lower.
Yeah, yeah, the it's yeah, it depends what product range is, but but the best selling cat would be high 80s.
Yeah,
But
yeah, but but again, that's full of sugar and God knows what else, isn't it? So, yeah. So, what's the plans for the Nutriment Company for 2025? Anything you can tell us? Or
so I mean, we we continue to bring out new product development. I've spoken to you about freeze dried coming, and spoke to you about fresh. We're launching fresh in Germany as we speak.
yeah,
We're launching fresh in Spain as we speak, and we'll be launching fresh over here, certainly by Pats and to the pet specialty
yeah,
market. So we've got those two things in new product development. We just literally launched nuggets for the
yeah.
first time, and they've gone really, really, really well actually. And I think it just demonstrates the retailer demand for an alternative product. Really, they've gone really, really well.
W- Well, and like no shade on your former company, Nature's Menu, but I think if people are, I think Nutriment's a bigger company than Nature's Menu in the market, and I think that if you were just buying nuggets from Nature's Menu, why not just buy them from you instead and knock them out? I think
I,
there's an element of that.
yeah, I think retailers and consumers want choice,
Yeah,
and actually, if we're all honest, we want to give, as a manufacturer and a brand, we want to give people choice. I remember in about um, 2018, 2019, Steve, that owns Pedigree and bought Just for Pets, spoke with me and said, "Look, Pete, we want to actually get new alternative raw brands in there as well as yours." I was like, "Great, right, let's sit down and scope it out to make sure you've got the right choice and the right suit." And everybody grew, because the consumer had all of a sudden had a category, all of a sudden had a choice, all of a sudden it wasn't a single brand in there that looked a bit odd and isolated. And so, good quality products genuinely give consumers choice and build it for everyone.
Mm.
The A choice of one is no choice at all.
No, no.
So we will continue to grow. We'll continue to grow organically. We've got one eye on on new businesses also,
Mm.
um, and but always with the consumer in mind. We're about innovation and consumer choice.
And I think what it does do as well, just going back to the consumer choice, if you look at, let's say, Just for Pets now, they've got multi freezers,
Yeah.
multiple freezers in store. I mean, same with the Jollies,
Mhm.
multi freezers, multi brands. And I think from a consumer perspective, if you've got an area where there's only one brand of something, it makes it a lot less appealing to you than if you walk in and there's, because then you feel like you're missing out on
Yeah.
something. It's like, why am I not feeding this? They've got like
Yeah.
tons of this stuff.
It became so in the early days. It was not just really about establishing that particular brand. It was about building a category,
Yeah.
and by building a category, it gave people choice. And it's that choice that has created a 350 million pound business. Because some people want the complete and balanced. Some people want the just meat. Some people want the 80-10-10. Some people want the novel protein. Some people want just chicken. And one brand probably wouldn't stand for all of those things, um, because they're different. They have different messages. So I think that's good. But certainly the move for a more confident raw feeder has brought in these 80-10-10s and the just meat products. The last 5 years, that's been quite significant.
And look, raw specialty shops as
Yeah,
well. There's a higher level of knowledge.
yeah,
Um, like one of my old customers at the Dog's Diner in near Liverpool.
yeah,
She wrote a book, and then she had the shop. And
yeah,
but these are the sort of people who are owning the shop, so they're there with people, and they're not necessarily selling the complete and balance. They're selling the 80-10-10s,
yeah,
and then saying add a bit of this, and your dog is such and such type of dog. Add some of this once. And it's becoming much more of a thing, and people like that. There's something about sort of making your own dog's dinner. It's like a lot of the raw feeders I know, they almost like to put together like a plate
yeah,
of stuff with
yeah,
little bits of pieces, and they've got their different like supplements and that sort of stuff. And it's almost like a subculture of people who that's what they love doing,
yeah,
and it's part of the fun for them.
yeah. 100%, 100%. We get creative in the kitchen at home for us, and we like to get creative in the kitchen for the people that we love. Be it our children, or our pets, and it's no different. There's no greater fun than seeing the animals that you love feeling well, looking good, enjoying themselves, and knowing that you've participated in that, because that gives you a good feeling. They 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 can't make that choice. They can't make that choice. And as I said before, the dog will eat anything, poor thing. They can't make that choice. So, the more people that make the right choice for the pets, the better, really.
Aye, amen to that.
Yes. Yeah.
So Peter, thanks a million for coming
Yeah,
in.
no, thanks for having me. And
And
and actually, I think on my way home, I think I'm going to be popping into a world first, which is a pet store and a petrol station, I believe,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
um, and in Cambridgeshire. So I shall look out for that on the way
yeah.
back.
No, it'd be great.
Yeah,
It'd be great. I mean, she'd be over the moon to see it, because
yeah,
actually she would love to have come today, but
yeah,
obviously she was at work.
yeah,
She can't slack off work like me, unfortunately.
oh,
But no, no,
yeah, great.
no. Thanks a million.
Yeah,
And if there's anyone who wants to get in hold of the Nutriment company,
yeah.
wants to find out more, stock, what's the best way to do it?
Well, the go to nutriment .co.uk, or even email me, peter.roy@nutriment.co,
No,
and I'll answer anything that's asked of me. We'll be at Crufts in next week.
yeah,
Blimey, we'll be at Crufts next week.
yeah.
So 4 days in 180,000 people and 20,000 dogs, and then I'm off to global, and then we'll be at Pat's, which is at the NEC this year for the first time. So that'll be interesting. Supporting the pet trade. We're at quite a few festivals over the summer as well. I'm going to do my fair share of that. So got my tent.
Do you know what? There's no better way of getting to the end consumer than fairs. I mean, when I was promoting this company, so when I was promoting the Bug Factory, I think I'd done about 20 reptile expos in the
Yeah,
US
yeah,
in a year,
yeah. They're good.
and it's just look. There's nothing more effective than getting out, meeting
Yeah,
people, talking to people,
yeah.
because also it's not just about you selling to people; it's about listening to problems they have and
Uh, and
understanding.
yeah, and also for me particularly, it's I very rarely speak to someone who uses our food. I speak to the retailer that sells our food. And so for me, I get to understand how people are using it, what they like about it, what they don't like about it, what they like more of, what they like less of. And I love it.
That.
I love it. But yeah, tent we've got the tent ready, we've got the gazebos ready. I just hope it stays sunny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, it'd be nicer to do it if you were in Florida, wouldn't it? Like if it's rather than the Stoke on a misty day or something.
Yeah. No, it's been good.
No,
So nice to see you.
yeah. Thanks a million, man.
Yeah.
Cheers, Peter.
Cheers.
Thank you.